Donald Trump had previously warned of a big price to pay after the attack. Missile strikes on a Syrian air base have left 14 dead hours after Donald Trump warned animal dictator Bashar al-Assad there would be a big price to pay for a horrifying chemical attack that killed dozens of children. Russia has blamed Israel for the strike on the T4 military base in Homs province, calling the raid a very dangerous development, but the country has refused to comment on its possible involvement. Moscow said 2 Israeli F-15 fighters launched the attack while flying over neighboring Lebanon, targeting the base with 8 missiles, 5 of which were shot down. The aircraft did not enter Syrian airspace, it said, while local reports claimed the rockets crossed Lebanese airspace over Kasserwan and Bekaa districts. The U.S. and France have both denied launching the attack, which is understood to have killed a number of Iranian fighters loyal to Assad. It followed a suspected poison gas attack on Saturday on the last remaining foothold for the Syrian opposition in the eastern suburbs of Damascus. At least 40 were killed while horrific images showed men, women and children gasping for air and foaming at the mouth, and medics said survivors smelled strongly of chlorine. Syria's state-run news agency SANA said this morning's airbase attack was Israeli aggression, having earlier pointed the finger at the U.S. Israel has so far refused to comment, but it carried out strikes against a Syrian government base in the country's center in February, with war monitors identifying it at the time as T4. Since 2012, Israel has struck inside Syria some 100 times, hitting suspected weapons convoys destined for the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, which has been fighting alongside Syrian government forces. Most recently, Israel hit the same T4 base in February, after it said an Iranian drone that had violated Israeli airspace took off from the base. An Israeli military spokeswoman declined to comment on this morning's raid. The Lebanese army says 4 Israeli warplanes violated Lebanon's airspace, flying from the Mediterranean Sea over the coastal town of Jani and then heading east, toward the city of Baalbek near the Syrian border. A statement from the Lebanese Armed Forces says the warplanes stayed in Lebanese airspace for about 10 minutes, starting at 3:25 a.m. on Monday before leaving it. But it did not say whether the warplanes carried out the airstrikes on Syria's T4 air base earlier in the day in central Syria. On Sunday, Trump and French counterpart Emmanuel Macron had vowed a strong, joint response to the suspected chemical attack on the rebel-held town of Douma. Horrific images from the alleged strike sparked global alarm, and the UN Security Council was expected to discuss the crisis later on Monday. The Syrian government denies carrying out the chemical attack, calling the claims a fabrication, but human rights groups and UN officials say the tactic amounts to forced displacement, a war crime. Trump promised a big price to pay over the apparent chemical attack as he lashed out at Russian President Vladimir Putin for his role in propping up Assad. Many dead, including women and children, in mindless chemical attack in Syria. Area of atrocity is in lockdown and encircled by Syrian army, making it completely inaccessible to outside world, Trump wrote. President Putin, Russia and Iran are responsible for backing animal Assad. Open area immediately for medical help and verification, he ordered. Another humanitarian disaster for no reason whatsoever. Sick, he wrote. Trump also used the opportunity to criticize his predecessor. If President Obama had crossed his stated red line in the sand, the Syrian disaster would have ended long ago, Trump tweeted. Animal Assad would have been history. Trump was referring to Obama's statement, which the former president later backed away from, that if he saw a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized, that would be a red line that would change the equation in Syria. Obama had threatened military action if this was the case. Britain's Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said he suspected Assad's regime was to blame and warned Russia not to interfere with an investigation. He warned the international community it must respond to the latest chemical weapons outrage in Syria. Johnson, who has backed military action after earlier atrocities, said the attack in Douma was deeply disturbing. Warning Britain was in close touch with allies, he added, those responsible for the use of chemical weapons have lost all moral integrity and must be held to account. Syria's SANA agency reported just before dawn that several missiles had hit T4 and that air defense systems had been activated. It initially reported the strike as a suspected U.S. attack but later withdrew all references to the United States. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which monitors the country's conflict, said 14 fighters had been killed, including Iranian forces allied to the country's regime. Forces from Russia and Iran, as well as fighters from the Lebanese Hezbollah militia, are known to have a presence at the base, said Observatory Chief Rami Abdelrahman. No Russian specialists present in Syria were injured in the attack, Moscow's defense ministry said. Israel has previously accused Damascus of allowing Iran to set up a complex at the base to supply arms to its ally, Lebanon Shiite Hezbollah. Monday's statements were unusual for Russia, which has generally been reticent about Israeli strikes in Syria even as it tries to shore up President Bashar al-Assad's rule. Russia and Israel set up a hotline in 2015 to prevent accidental clashes between their forces in Syria, and diplomatic sources on both sides say Moscow is willing to turn a blind eye to Israeli actions as long as they do not destabilize Damascus. Israel rarely acknowledges strikes in Syria but has said that, as a matter of policy, they aim to thwart the entrenchment of Iranian forces or arms transfers to Hezbollah. The Pentagon said this morning that it was not carrying out strikes in Syria at this time, while French military officials told AFP, "It was not us." Last year, the U.S. launched several dozen Tomahawk cruise missiles at a Syrian air base after a chemical attack in the northern Syrian town of Khan Sheikhoun killed dozens of people. Israel has also struck inside Syria in recent years. Haytham Becker, an opposition activist inside the town where the chemical attack took place, spoke to the Associated Press by WhatsApp. Becker said several bombs laced with chemicals landed in Douma Saturday night. Another activist, Blum Abu Salah, said a large, yellow cylinder smashed through the roof of an apartment building and came to rest on the third floor and started to discharge gas. The Syrian Civil Defense Group documented 42 fatalities but was impeded from searching further by strong odors that gave rescuers difficulties breathing, said Siri Mahmoud, a spokesman for the group. A joint statement by the Civil Defense Group and the Medical Society said that more than 500 people, mostly women and children, were brought to medical centers complaining of difficulty breathing, foaming at the mouth and burning sensations in the eyes. Some had bluish skin, a sign of oxygen deprivation. The symptoms were consistent with chemical exposure. One patient, a woman, had convulsions and pinpoint pupils, suggesting exposure to a nerve agent, the statement said. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights issued a higher death toll, saying at least 80 people were killed in Douma, including around 40 who died from suffocation, but it said the suffocations were the result of shelters collapsing on people inside them. Until this minute, no one has been able to find out the kind of agent that was used, Mahmoud said in a video statement from northern Syria. The Syrian government, in a statement posted on the state-run news agency SANA, denied the allegations. It said the claims were fabrications by the Army of Islam and a failed attempt to impede government advances. The army, which is advancing rapidly and with determination, does not need to use any kind of chemical agents, the statement said. Russia denied any involvement in the attack. General Yuri Yevtushenko was quoted by Russian news agencies Sunday as saying Russia was prepared to send specialists to Douma to confirm the fabricated nature of the reports. It came after talks between the Army of Islam and Russia collapsed Friday, ending 10 days of calm for residents trapped inside. Syrian state media said today that dozens of civilians who had been held for years by the rebel group have been set free. SANA